Okay, hello everyone. It gives me a great pleasure to introduce to you all the beautiful Jessica Sheaffer. She has over 20 years experience as a master of bodywork, of healing, and now she is a life coach. We met like sort of late last year, and it was like divine time, divine fate. We were both going through similar experiences, and she has just been such a dear, dear friend to me, soul sister, just somebody that I admire so much. And we've been sort of on similar paths and journeys with our own healing and transformation since last year. And I really wanted to bring her on because she really is the embodiment of that healing, of what it takes at a cellular level, of holding that space, being with sisters, and has so much wisdom with healing the mother wound, healing the feminine wounds. So without further ado, hello, Jessica. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Lauren. Thank you for having me. I feel so honored.
Yes, I'm so happy you are here. So I wanted listeners and other women and maybe some men, as I really feel like when men are here and listening to our stories, it helps everyone. So I wanted to go into your experience, your story about healing the mother wound, healing that those feminine wounds we have, and just to start off with, like, what catapulted you?
I think probably the biggest catalyst was last year. It's been about a year and a half. I was in a short-term relationship with a man, but it was very intense. And it went from talking every day, him telling me he loved me, he never met anyone like me, to literally overnight, him telling me he didn't want me in his life. And I think the extreme of having that attachment to, like, now I'm gone, I want nothing to do with you, was like having the rug pulled out from underneath me. And it literally spiraled me down into, I think, what I now know is probably my most early childhood wound, abandonment wound. And I was shaken. I was truly shaken from that experience. And it really did force me to have to be with little Jessica. I had to be with the younger part of myself. And really, I would say, looking at it from a big picture perspective, learn how to give me all the things I didn't get as a kid. I got a lot of great things. My parents truly did the best that they could, but there were big developmental gaps in my experience as a kid. And I think that ending of that relationship brought it like front and center. It was like, when looking back, what I really saw was that you're not going to have the life you want until you go into this deep, dark space within you and you love yourself there. I had to really meet myself there. And that was foreign to me, Lauren. And I know you understand this. It was like, I can love anyone else all day, but to really love myself, I still hadn't fully embodied that.
Yeah, I definitely know what that feels like, because we kind of went through the same similar thing. And I think in our industry, especially like in spirituality too, there's this sort of like stigma of like going to those depths, or being there, and we just want to, like, meditate it away, or like think positive thoughts. And can you just speak a little on that and what your experience and what you've noticed?
Oh yeah. So I think, to speak to what you just said, I had been doing that my entire life, because that's was my experience. Was growing up, there wasn't really space for Jessica. And so because there wasn't space for all of me, I developed coping strategies of being a people pleaser. I was definitely an overachiever, like the 4.0 student, first chair clarinet player. So from a very young age, I thought, well, if I just show up and I take care of everybody else and I do really well, then I'll be noticed. And so I had been replaying that strategy my entire life. But underneath the girl who appeared to be all happy and friendly and joyful, which I was, it's not like I am that, but still equally so underneath was this aspect of me that honestly, Lauren, I had a lot of pain. And the pain would manifest as anxiety. I mean, I've had anxiety since I was a kid. I still have moments where I get triggered, but that's not my state anymore. And so I, like you mentioned, spent many years meditating. You know, I became a yoga instructor. So I have these moments in time where I'd feel very at peace and very zen and very like, oh, life is so good. But the truth was, underneath that was this scared little girl, this girl who thought she wasn't worthy. And so after that breakup, I had to feel the pain. I had to go, oh my gosh, I've been trying to suppress this feeling of I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy of love. I feel like something's wrong with me. That was a belief that came up through coaching for me that, man, I really believe this story that I wasn't good enough and there's something wrong with me. So I had to process that. And when you process, it means you have to feel the pain. You can't just meditate it away. You can't, because some people actually use meditation as a way to numb themselves. And I couldn't do that. In fact, meditation felt kind of uncomfortable. So I had to cry. I had to love myself in a way I've never loved myself, which is I had to just be with me, really be with me and be okay with the pain and let the pain come up and love the pain, accept the pain. Don't judge it anymore. Don't judge yourself, because I was so critical of me. So it was a lot of pain. But now looking back, it was the greatest gift I ever gave to me, because I literally started with like baby Jess. I had to rock her literally. And I've told you, there were times I'd be in bed and I literally have to rock me. And I would speak to Jessica as a baby, like, I love you. You're so sweet. You know, I'd sing to me. And at different parts of my healing process, I would start to discern, oh, this is 5-year-old Jess. What does 5-year-old Jess need to hear? What does 8-year-old Jess need to hear? So it was me just really being present with the void and the pain and just going into the space of loving her and talking to her and reassuring her and doing that really for months and months and months and months. And in that process, I really arrived at a place where now I love me. Now I don't have to pretend and put on a fake smile. Now when I show up, I am really authentically happy. And you know that because you're friends with me. So you know that's the truth because you know me.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes, 100%. That's why I wanted to interview you and have you on, because I was like, you know, I couldn't think of anyone else that would be more perfect than to be part of this. So yes, thank you so much for those beautiful shares. And I wanted to speak to how you noticed a lot of things stemming from the mother wound and those feminine wounds, since for a majority women or people who identify as feminine, we have both masculine and feminine wounds, but with the mother feminine wounds, it really takes us out of our core. Mm-hmm. You know, like we are heavily programmed in a toxic patriarchal society for the most part when we're born. And just recently, I'd say we're shifting more. Mm-hmm. So what did you notice within your experience with your own feminine wounds, and what really supported tapping more into that feminine?
I think at the core of it, the root of it was a lack of nurturing. And I think for me as the feminine, that's one of the things the feminine essence embodies, is that deep space of nurturing. And I am like the ultimate nurturer. You've seen me with my kids. I think a lot of my clients would say a lot. That's one of the reasons why they like my touch, is they feel very nurtured. But I didn't know how to give it to me. And I think that was the gap with my relationship with my mother. And like I said, she really did do the best that she could. but she divorced my dad when I was fairly young, and then she wasn't in my life very much. And in fact, I was raised more with my dad and my stepmom. So she was just a couple of visits a year and phone calls. And I just think there was an aspect of those early child experiences where I just didn't get nurtured enough. And so where that's played out as an adult is in my friendships and in my intimate relationships with men, that piece has been missing. So I have no problem meeting someone else and holding space and loving them, but it wasn't always returned, or it was returned, but there was some dysfunction sort of interwoven within it. And it's left me with a lot of disappointment and a lot of sadness. Yeah, and a lot of that relationship dynamic where I felt like I could, like my job was almost to rescue other people and nurture them. That's a lot of my life, was that dynamic. So I would say for me, as far as the feminine wound, that's probably the essence. If I really look at it, it was the lack of nurturing. So I had to learn how to nurture myself and really, really give to me. And now it's showing up. Now my life's better than it ever has been. But I had to give it to me first. Yeah. You can't find it from a man if you haven't given it to you first, you know?
Exactly.
As you know. So that, just talking about it, I just feel so at peace because now I love me, you know? So just back to your question, nurturing, for me, that's it right there, is the nurturing piece as far as my feminine wound.
Thank you. I just want to show people what's possible when we go within first, 100%, and giving the results, because we can see all the things like, oh, do this, do that. We see coaches online, they paint this really pretty picture, but it's like, let me show you how and hold you and give you hope that you can have the same results too, that we are humans and we are more similar than we are different. And we have these wounds and we can heal and we can go within, and it's okay to cry. I think sometimes, you know, there's sort of the shame of the negative thinking and the feelings. But if we don't accept them, they're still there and we're repressing them, right?
Yes. Yeah, and that's a lot of when I coach. That's the most common theme. When I just coach women, I will coach men at some point, but you know, right now I'm just coaching women. Every woman that I work with has shame. I think it's just culturally, we are programmed with a lot of it because we're very domesticated and we're taught in order to be accepted, we have to be a certain way. And I think we actually underneath that are a lot more wild and free. So when you have a wildness to you, but you're programmed with, well, you have to fit into a box. When you don't align with that box, you experience shame and a lot of self-criticism, and that is evident in the inner critic. So that's what happens is what I see in these women and in myself is the feeling starts to come up, but then they start to judge themselves. I shouldn't have these feelings, right? I shouldn't have these feelings. There's something wrong with me. Yeah, I would say those are probably the two biggest beliefs that coincide with that shame. And then we'll gaslight ourselves. So we go into the shame, we feel the feeling, we go into the shame, and then it's like, oh, I shouldn't feel this. I should feel something else. So that's why people are never really able to drop into those darker places, because they pull themselves out with the inner critic. And then what we do is we distract ourselves. So we start to feel the feeling, our inner critic comes up, and then we don't want to feel that feeling. So we move into, well, I got to find something out here in order to fill the void. And then you're always seeking and searching. It will never end. You'll constantly be seeking and searching. So do yourself a favor and be willing to do the work, because at the end of it, you're going to love yourself. You are going to be your most precious best friend. And from that, you will give to yourself in a way you never have. You will only accept that in your relationships. And then you start to draw to you the things that align with that. So talk about aligning with your divine feminine. That is it at its fullest, is you just start attracting it in. It's not hard work. It just shows up. You're like, that showed up and that showed up. I didn't have to do anything, but it's because I'm aligned here now. So
yes, and just watching you and just the magnetic being that you really shifted. Like sometimes when I've seen you and we hang out, I'm like, whoa, she's just glowing, like her energy. It's like,
aw, I love it.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, 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 of course. Thank you so much for sharing all that too. It's so true and so important, I think, to have these conversations, to talk about the realness, the vulnerability, the rawness of it, and what happens when we come through it too. Because we have those dark nights of the soul sometimes, and these catalysts that really launch us into stuff that they're not going anywhere, right? So it's like, might as well, if we're being brought down, surrender.
Yes.
And trust that we can get through it. And what have you noticed in your relationships and how they shifted since you've shifted in yourself?
Well, the dynamic of me forever feeling like in order to receive love, I've got to rescue. Now I have especially some amazing girlfriends who just always show up for me. It's kind of like what I was saying a moment ago, where it's just now I attract it in. Now I'm just so receptive to everyone else's love. And so people show up in my life. They do things for me. In fact, I told my best friend, I'm like, I think you have given more to me than I to you. And that's new for me. That's a new thing. So it's really, really shown up in my relationships, because for the first time, I would say in the past year, I feel more supported than I ever have. I don't feel alone anymore. And for a lot of my life, I felt very alone inside, even though I was surrounded with people. I felt alone, even with people around me. And now I don't feel alone. So I had to allow it in. And in order to allow it in, you have to love yourself. That's really it. You have to just love and fully accept yourself. And when you arrive there, then it's mutual. It's going to be reciprocated. Mm-hmm. So that's been my most favorite thing. And I don't accept anything less than that anymore. Whereas before I always accepted treatment that wasn't fair to me because I thought it was my job to be the nice person. But really I was accepting toxic behaviors. And I just don't do that anymore.
That's so good. Yes, 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 yes. And I've heard some people say, and it's usually with the beliefs, right? What we experienced when we were 0 to 8 years old growing up, as to like, well, I just want to help this person who is maybe having that toxic behavior, or they are doing certain things that they know is hurting them, but it's almost like this self-punishment, right?
Yes. Yes. Well, and that's where a lot of people are stuck at, is they're unconscious to how much shame they're really holding. And so they replay out that experience, which means a lot of self-sabotage. Yeah, I would say self-sabotage is probably the biggest indicator that someone's carrying shame. And not really taking the steps to get out of the victimization and the martyr realm. And a lot of people in pain, because I've been working with chronic pain for so long, for over 20 years, that's my niche. That's what I was identifying in a lot of my clients, is these people that were coming in with a lot of pain. Along with the pain was they're stuck in victimization. There's an aspect of their being that feels very disempowered. And it's because it's their inner child stuff that they haven't resolved and healed. And so the people that I started, in essence, coaching, because, I just recently started calling myself a coach, but really I've been doing that for years. They started having awesome shifts. So yes, the physical touch, the work that I do is amazing, but because I was teaching them how to love themselves, and then they were also willing to go to the dark places and love, and me literally kind of guiding them through, we're going to love you in that trauma. We're going to release that energy and then love that aspect of you that needed that to be held in that moment. So those people started having radical shifts. So not only was their pain resolving, but their life was changing. So that shame piece is a huge component, I think, to why a lot of people get stuck, and they stay in this cycle of self-sabotage. And then their behaviors end up being toxic. They're not really toxic. No one is toxic. But when you have pain, your way of really the cry for help is to hurt others. Mm-hmm. So you know that, like, hurt people hurt people. Mm-hmm. So when you hurt somebody, I've hurt people, you've hurt people, we've all hurt somebody, it's because we're hurt. So the answer is always, it's learning how to love you. It's learning how to love you, which means you have to be willing to look at the shame piece. And that's where a lot of people, they just don't want to go. I've had clients on the table when I do body work admit things to me that they're like, I've been working with the therapist for 10 years and I've never admitted that, because they felt safe.
And that's something else that I wanted to touch on, because it's probably the most important foundational piece when we're healing. And I've experienced this too, as you know, I think people try to do it by themselves and they want to do it on their own, right? But in my experience of what I've seen, it's just like, we need each other at some level, right? And so when we can come into those safe spaces,
yes,
that's the magic. That's where the healing happens.
Yes.
I can't tell you how many times somebody has shamed me for my shame, and it's like, it's still there. And so would you
sometimes therapists do it? Oh yeah. I think therapists sometimes inadvertently do that to their clients. It's just because I've been working so many years with people in pain, and then it's like the truth starts to come out. And what you talked about, that sense of safety, oh my gosh, we could do a whole nother talk about safety. Mm-hmm. You have to feel safe, because usually the wound, a piece of that wound was whenever it occurred, you didn't feel safe. Mm-hmm. So something happened, and then you drew a conclusion about yourself and life. And usually that conclusion and some piece of it is the shame part. So in order to heal the shame part, you have to be in an environment where you're safe, which means you have to be with very, very healthy practitioners, you know, a coach, a therapist, whomever, who can really hold and embody a sense of, you are not going to be judged, and you're going to be held in this container. And I'm going to honor you and respect you and really love you no matter what, that you are safe to reveal all of your sides and everything you've experienced. That's where healing happens. But until then, you're still going to lock it away. And that's what we do with trauma. We lock it away, you know, but you can't ever be your fullest expression if you're still holding those energy bodies. So yes, safety. And I think safety correlates with nurturing, which is what I talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. When we're nurtured, we feel safe.
Yeah. And it's part of both, I think, the masculine and the feminine too, right? Of that support.
Yes.
So this is so good. Such golden nuggets we are talking about, that we're speaking of. I really think it's going to give insight and that invitation for people to go within and maybe lower any of those judgments of those, you know, that self inner critic. What were some of your biggest breakthroughs? Recent past, I know you said you were drawing more of those aligned relationships, and everything has been coming more like of that magnetism, right?
Yeah. Yes. So more breakthroughs. I would say for me, not to have anxiety every day is a freaking huge breakthrough. Because I, at some level, have always had anxiety, and I still get triggered, you know, like a few days ago, I reached out to you, I was totally being triggered. But I worked through it. I process through it. I know how to meet myself. I also know how to reach out for support. And you mentioned that. That is huge. You have to ask for help. And when you have this wound that makes you feel very alone, you often don't reach out for help, or you have a judgment around reaching out for help, especially for men. I think this is something men really struggle with. It's like, to reach out would mean that somehow I'm weak. So for me, it's like getting support, asking for help when I need it. A lot of us with trauma, that's really hard to overcome that. Not having anxiety every day, like literally waking up and being excited about life. I'm now living in a lot of prosperity consciousness. Like, I just accept prosperity as my life. And when I start to have thoughts that don't resonate with that, I look at it, I'm with it, I process if there's any feeling, and then I go back into prosperity. And because of that, like I said earlier, amazing relationships. I have a thriving bodywork practice, a coaching business. I mean, I took on 7 new clients in September.
That's
which
amazing.
is huge. I know, for someone who's, I know that's a big deal. But it's because, like you said earlier, that space and container of safety is huge. And when we feel that, when we feel we have somebody with us who's like, I am here. And where do you want to go? Like, what's here? What are your goals? What are your wants and desires? Well, I'm going to be the freaking beacon of light. That's like, girl, we're going to help you get there. And I'm going to hold your hand through the process. And I'm going to keep you accountable to this. And when you really, as a coach, and you know this, when you really hold that space, then it's going to allow someone else to go, okay, I'm ready, because they felt met. So I think for me, it's like, because I met myself, now I'm able to meet others in a deeper way. I've been traveling. I mean, there's so much good in my life. I mean, it's just like, it's so good to finally be here and go, oh my gosh, there's just so much abundance and joy and travel and new experiences that are happening. Yeah, this is the best my life's ever been, for sure.
That's so beautiful. And I've seen you blossom. I know the sky is the limit for you. And just personally, like, as a friend, one of the best friendships I've ever had. We were talking the other night, and I was like, I've never had somebody say all these nice things so much. And it's just like, this is what sisterhood can be. This is what sisterhood is intended to be when we do heal. And that's why, another reason why I wanted to bring you on. And I'm just so grateful for your friendship, for, when we do hold that space for one another, that nurturing, that safety.
Yes.
It's a life changing. It is so transformational. And this is another part of why I think I just want more women to know what's possible when we do heal these wounds, and we can find more aligned sisterhood.
Yes.
Because I see the resistance of like, oh, well, women are catty, I can't trust other women. And it's just like, those were most of my relationship, as you know, like,
oh yes,
very, very toxic. But at the same time, it's possible to totally change that trajectory into a new normal.
Yes, I agree with that. And I think that's something I went through too, because historically, I told you, a lot of my relationships were sort of the rescuer victim. So I always felt like I needed to take care of others. Subconsciously, I did that because underneath it was like, please love me back. And so me as a coach now, this is one of the things that I incorporate into my practice, because I do one-on-one coaching and now group coaching. And that is, I tell these women, like, look, most of us, bless our parents and our caregivers, they didn't have the tools and resources and the awareness to really give us what we needed. And so if you keep going to them, expecting them to give that to you, you're just going to continue to be disappointed. And even in some of our friendships, because even some of our friends are not invested in us becoming the best versions of themselves, because as you change, and if they don't want to change, it may change the nature of the relationship. So the best thing you can do is find a container, find your group, find your people that are going to really support you. Real people, women, especially, who you feel safe with, and who are also committed to helping be that reflection of, I'm going to help you be the best version of yourself. Because then you're going to feel elevated and you're going to feel uplifted. That space is going to feel so much lighter. Because the truth is, we all know it. If you're in a room with a lot of women and they're operating with those lower frequencies, it's gossip, right? It's so easy to talk about other people. I mean, it's just, I've been in that situation so many times, and then I find myself going there and I'm like, ooh, yuck, I don't like this feeling. So in an environment where you're really there to uplift one another, and you want to get there, so I'm going to help you, and I'm going to remind you this is where you're going and this is what's possible, and I'm going to love you no matter what. You're going to have a hard day and I'm still going to love you. You're going to get triggered and I'm still going to be there for you. Because a lot of us didn't get that as children. We didn't have that. So it's like missing within us. So to have that container, it's really a healthy reflector of what a healthy relationship should feel like.
Yes, definitely. Because I think with the wounds, what happens is that we get triggered by one another, right? And so like if someone else is shining, that our limiting beliefs or trauma or whatever goes to, oh, that person is taking from me, or I'm not enough. And so what happens is that darkness or those wounds and what was modeled, the mean girl era, right?
Yes.
We attach through gossip instead of being like, wow, this person has so many amazing things that I'm seeing it. So that means that this is within me too.
That was so well said.
And that's the biggest piece that's been missing.
Yes. Right. Well, and I think within the female species, I remember reading this somewhere that because, just going back to primitive times, it's like women are competition for men. Right. So I think in our DNA, that's probably still some programming. And that's why women can be, I think, super judgy and hard on other women. And they even say like women dress for other women. They don't really dress for men, So when you recognize that tendency in yourself, because I'll notice it sometimes where I'm on Facebook and I feel myself wanting to judge another woman. And I really look at that and I go, no, there's an aspect of her being that I really like, but my ego's getting in the way. My ego's like putting out judgments, right? This kind of jealousy feeling. And then I want to judge. And so I have enough awareness to go, oh, this is what I'm doing. Oh, look, this aspect of her is something I want for myself. So now I can reframe it, but I think a lot of us women do that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a constant thing I have to still work on and catch myself too, as to like, oh, this person has something I don't have, but it's just like, no, how can I shift that to a more supporting awareness as to like, oh, this is in my field of vision because it's possible.
Yes.
And then also at the same time, it's like, if something doesn't feel good and it's like, a little of that yucky feeling, it's like, this is in my field of vision, maybe as a reminder to say what I'm agreeing to and not agreeing to. So that's a little more for another topic, but I've just loved this conversation so much. I know that people are really going to benefit from just your wisdom, your experience, your energy in itself. What is one final piece of advice, the biggest thing that you would emphasize somebody listening right now?
You are so awesome. You don't know how freaking awesome you are, and you have a belief that you're not. That's the only reason why you don't have what you want in your life. That's it. So do everything you can to dive in, be willing to unpack anything getting in the way, because you can have what you want. I so believe that you can have what you want. It's just going to take some unpacking. So get the support, get what you need, align yourself to the people and the resources that are fully invested in helping you truly live your joy and live your dream. That's what I have to say.
Yes, I love it and agree 100%. Where can people find you, connect with you, social media, your website? Where would you the best direct people?
I don't have a huge presence yet. I'm still working on my website. It's jessicasheaffer.com. I just had my photos done, so hopefully soon I will have a website. I'm also a body worker, so austinbowenwork.com is my bodywork website, and then Instagram, I'm at Soul Coach Jessica.
And I will put all that in the description of this episode as well. This has been such a fabulous conversation, interaction of vulnerability, raw authenticity, of something that we just have had so much experience with in our own healing, and really driven with our own purpose. So thank you so much, Jessica, for being here, for spending your beautiful time and energy with me and all the listeners. And hopefully we will talk to people who resonated with this.
That's awesome. You're such a gem, Lauren. I just love you. Thank you for how you've shown up, because you're so badass.
Thank you so much. Love you and love you all.
Okay, love you too.